I was halfway through my third year in pharmacy school at the University of Chicago when I fainted behind the counter at the student cafe. It was a Thursday night, cold and windy, and the line of caffeine-deprived students never seemed to shrink. I was working the late shift again, because I had to. Rent was due in 3 days, and after buying a sack of rice and 3 packets of eggs, I was down to $11 in my checking account. I'm Caleb Langston, 20 years old, and despite what most people think when I say I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona, I'm broke. I came from what used to be a very comfortable family. My dad, Dr. Bruce Langston, is a respected emergency physician in Phoenix. He's the kind of man who used to drive a Range Rover, wore custom dress shirts, and always left a generous tip at restaurants. My mom, Mira, has been a stay-at-home wife ever since I was born. They paid my tuition, sure, but everything else, rent, food, books, transit, even toothpaste, that was on me. I juggled 3 jobs, tutoring chemistry on Mondays and Wednesdays, cafe shifts 4 nights a week, and weekend deliveries for a local grocery chain. I slept 4 hours a night, barely had time to study, and sometimes went days without speaking to another person outside of work. The day I collapsed, I hadn't eaten anything since the evening before. I'd been too busy to grab a meal, and I'd forgotten to bring the peanut butter sandwich I'd wrapped in foil that morning. All I remember is trying to hand a latte to a customer when my hand started to shake. The tray tilted, cups wobbled, and then darkness. When I opened my eyes, the lights were too bright, and the air smelled like antiseptic. I blinked and realized I was lying in a hospital bed. My head hurt, my body ached, and I had IV fluids running into my arm. A nurse told me I had collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition. I wasn't surprised. I hadn't been okay for months. Later that day, I found out my cafe manager had called my parents. My mom didn't answer, but apparently my dad picked up. I felt embarrassed. I didn't want them to know how bad things had gotten. I especially didn't want to hear another lecture from my mother about learning to be independent. She always said I was strong enough to figure things out on my own, unlike my sister Serena. I checked my phone. Missed calls. One text from my friend Marcus. "You okay, man? Heard you fainted?" I replied, "Yeah, just exhausted. Took too many shifts." He said he'd come by my apartment the next day. I got discharged within hours. The hospital bill was steep, but thankfully, student insurance covered most of it. Still, I'd need to cut even more corners in the next month. On the train ride back to my apartment, I stared out the window, the city lights blurring past me. I thought about how far I'd come to get into this program. I'd been top of my class all through high school. I was supposed to be the bright one, the one who'd make his parents proud. And yet, here I was, starving and collapsing from exhaustion, while my sister Serena was living in Florence studying luxury brand management, sipping espressos in outdoor cafes, and tagging her outfits #Dior Daily on Instagram. I told myself I was being bitter, that I shouldn't compare. But deep down, something didn't feel right. The next day, as promised, Marcus showed up with groceries. He didn't say much, just handed me a grocery bag with pasta, eggs, apples, and a bar of chocolate. I almost cried. We cooked, we ate, we talked. And for the first time in months, I let myself say it out loud. I think there's something off about how my family's supporting Serena. Marcus looked up from his plate. "You think?" he said, half joking, but his eyes were serious. That's when everything started to unravel. Marcus pushed his plate aside, leaned back on my creaky apartment chair, and crossed his arms. "Let me get this straight," he said. "Your dad is an emergency physician. Your family lives in one of the wealthiest zip codes in Arizona, and they're telling you they can't afford to help you with rent or food?" I sighed. "Yeah. I asked Mom last month if they could send even $100 to help with groceries. She said paying tuition already stretched their limits." Marcus squinted. "But your sister's studying in Florence, right? That's not a cheap weekend in Miami. That's thousands in tuition, international housing, cost of living, and designer clothes." He had a point. Serena was 3 years older than me. Always artsy, always adored. She'd been accepted to a luxury branding school in Italy that specialized in fashion management and high-end visual merchandising. Mom posted about it constantly. My sweet girl on her way to Paris for an internship. Serena's sketches were selected for a boutique showcase. Proud mom. Meanwhile, when I made the dean's list, my mom sent a thumbs up emoji. Growing up, the favoritism had always been there. I just didn't have a name for it back then. Like when I was 15 and wanted to go to a pharmacy summer program in Denver, Mom said it was too expensive. That same summer, Serena was flown to Milan for a teen textile workshop. I let it slide, over and over. But now, with Marcus pointing out the cracks, I couldn't stop seeing them. I thought maybe Serena got a scholarship, I said, trying to rationalize. Or maybe Mom's helping her out of her own savings. Marcus shook his head. Dude, come on. I know it's hard to believe, but you've got to consider the possibility that your mom, she's not being straight with you. I didn't want to hear that. I really didn't. But she's my mom, man, I said. Why would she lie to me? Marcus shrugged. I'm not saying she's evil, but some parents, they see one kid as an investment, the other, just expected to survive. The words sat heavy in the air. You ever talk to your dad about this directly? He asked. I shook my head. Dad's barely home. He works 12-hour shifts, sometimes days in a row. Mom's always managed everything. Money, school stuff, schedules. Maybe that's the problem, Marcus said quietly. The thought hit me like a punch. Had Dad really been kept in the dark all this time? Was he like me, trusting Mira to be fair and just assuming everything was fine? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Dad was the provider. Mom was the gatekeeper. And the gate had been closed on me. After Marcus left that night, I stayed up late, scrolling through Serena's Instagram. Just last week, she posted a picture from a rooftop party, Florence's skyline behind her, tagged in a boutique hotel suite, holding a martini glass with the caption, Mom knows what I need before I do. #gifted, #luxury life. I stared at the photo for a long time. In her world, what I need meant cocktails and couture. In mine, it meant one good meal a day. I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone and hit dial. For the first time in over 6 months, I was calling Serena. The phone rang twice before Serena picked up. Caleb? Her voice was airy and surprised. Wow, you actually called. Are you okay? Hey, yeah, I just wanted to check in, I said, trying to keep my tone casual, but even I could hear the stiffness in my voice. There was a clink of glass on her end, then muffled music. I'm actually at a networking event. My professor invited me, but I can step out. A door clicked and suddenly the background noise disappeared. She lowered her voice. What's up? You never call. Did something happen? I hesitated, then chose a softer entry point. Just been thinking about you lately, wondering how Florence is treating you. There was a pause, then a bubbly laugh. It's amazing. Mom just sent me the most perfect Balenciaga scarf for winter. You know how she is. Always 2 steps ahead of what I need. My stomach twisted. Balenciaga? I repeated. Yeah, a limited design. She said she didn't want me catching a cold walking between class and the design lab. Oh, and she also wired me a little extra for the gallery opening next weekend. About $1,900. That number hit me like a slap. Oh, wow, I murmured, swallowing the wave of nausea crawling up my throat. You okay? She asked, sensing the shift in my tone. Yeah, I didn't know Mom was able to send that much. Serena didn't seem to catch the tension. Well, she usually sends about $4,000 a month for rent, food, materials, the basics, plus gifts when she feels generous. $4,000 every month. When I had begged for $50 to cover groceries, I went quiet, too quiet. Hello? Serena said, voice dipping in concern. I'm here, I said. Sorry, I guess I thought things were tight. Mom told me they were cutting back on everything. She laughed again, but this time it was more hesitant. Well, for me, she's always said it's important to make the right impression. Fashion's all about appearance, right? Right, I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't take it anymore. Hey, I should let you go. Sounds like you're at something important. I said quickly, trying to pull the pieces of myself together before I shattered over the phone. "Oh, yeah," she said. "But it was nice hearing from you. You sound tired. Are you doing okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "I'm fine." We hung up and I stared at my cracked ceiling for a long time. Fine. I was anything but fine. That phone call was like peeling back the wallpaper to find mold growing underneath. The signs had been there all along, I just hadn't wanted to see them. My sister wasn't the problem, my mom was. All those times she said money was tight, all those excuses for why she couldn't send help. She was sending it, just not to me. Suddenly, the exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was emotional, bone deep, a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. That night, I made a decision. Thanksgiving was coming, and I was going home. The plane ticket home was the cheapest I could find, a cramped midnight flight that landed at 5 a.m. I didn't care. I wasn't flying for comfort, I was flying for clarity. My dad picked me up from the airport. He gave me a surprised once-over when I walked out of arrivals. "You've lost weight," he said bluntly. "You eating okay?" "Trying to," I muttered. He nodded but didn't push. That was his way. Quiet observation, silent concern. I wondered how much he really knew about my life in Chicago. About the ramen dinners, the night shifts, the collapse. Mom greeted me at the door with a slightly forced smile. Her eyes flitted across my face like she was trying to assess how much I knew. I didn't hug her. I couldn't. She didn't ask many questions, just told me to set my bag down and wash up before lunch. The dining table was set with her usual care. Salad, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and those small artisan rolls she always bought from the expensive bakery across town. I hadn't seen food this good in weeks. I should have been hungry, but my stomach was in knots. We sat, me across from Mom, Dad at the head of the table, and started eating in silence. It didn't last long. Dad looked over at me, concern wrinkling his forehead. "You really don't look well, Caleb. What have you been eating out there?" I forced a smile. "Mostly instant noodles and discount meals." He frowned. "What about your cafeteria? Too expensive. That bad, huh?" He put his fork down. "Is the allowance I've been sending enough? Maybe we should increase it." I stopped chewing. The room went still. "What allowance?" I asked. Dad blinked. "The $2,500 I've been wiring you every month. Since August." I stared at him. "Dad, I haven't gotten a single dollar." His fork clattered onto his plate. "What?" "I thought you knew," I said carefully. "I asked Mom for help weeks ago. She told me the money situation was tight." Dad turned his gaze slowly to Mom. "Mira, have you not been transferring the allowance?" She didn't answer. "Mira," he repeated more sharply. She looked down at her plate, hands clenched in her lap. Finally, in a small voice, she said, "No, I haven't." I leaned back in my chair. The truth was here, in the open now. But it still hit like a sledgehammer. "Why not?" Dad asked, voice rising. "There were other expenses," she said, eyes still lowered. "Such as?" he pressed. Silence. Then, Serena needed the support more. Dad blinked. "Support? She's in Italy, Mira. We're paying her international tuition and housing. What more does she need?" "She has to maintain a certain image," Mom said defensively. "She's studying luxury branding. That world is ruthless. If she shows up in the wrong shoes, they'll dismiss her." "And Caleb?" Dad shot back. "Collapsed from overwork, living off instant noodles. Does he not need anything?" "He's strong," Mom snapped, lifting her head at last. "He'll be fine, he always is. But Serena, she's different. She's delicate." The words stung more than I expected. Dad stared at her, his voice quiet but razor sharp. "How much have you been sending her?" "Just what she needs." "How much, Mira?" $4,000 a month. Sometimes a little more if she has events or emergencies," she said as if it were normal. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. Dad sat back in his chair, stunned. "You've been giving her double what I asked you to give Caleb." And told me nothing? She's building a future in fashion, Mom said. That takes investment. So does medicine, I said softly, but apparently I'm not worth the cost. Her eyes flicked to me, startled. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Dad looked like he was barely holding himself together. Do you have any idea how serious this is? You lied to me. You diverted funds. You let your son suffer while spoiling your daughter. It's not spoiling. It's theft, he cut in. Of trust, of opportunity, of fairness, and it ends now. Mom crossed her arms, defiant. You can't just cut Serena off. I can, Dad said firmly. And I will. From now on, I'll handle all finances. I'll wire Caleb's allowance directly. And we're going to talk to a lawyer about the trust fund, because I'm starting to wonder if there's more you haven't told me. Her face went pale. I pushed my plate away. Suddenly, the smell of warm rolls and butter made me sick. Dad turned to me. I'm sorry, son. I thought you were being taken care of. I had no idea. I shook my head. It's not your fault, Dad. You trusted her. He nodded slowly. Not anymore. The rest of the meal passed in silence. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, trying to look wounded. Dad sat stiff, fists clenched, and I sat in the ruins of a truth I'd suspected for years. Finally exposed. That night, after the silent storm of our dinner, I lay on the old bed in my childhood room, staring up at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to the ceiling when I was 12. They hadn't glowed in years. Downstairs, muffled voices rose and fell. My parents were arguing in the kitchen. I couldn't make out every word, but the tone said enough. Sharp, bitter, betrayed. A little before midnight, a knock came at my door. Yeah? I said, sitting up. Dad opened the door slowly, his eyes rimmed red. Not with tears, but with exhaustion. He looked 10 years older than when he'd picked me up from the airport that morning. Can I come in? He asked. I nodded. He sat at the edge of my bed, rubbed his palms together like he didn't know where to start. I owe you a real apology, Caleb, he said after a pause. I should have been paying more attention. I thought your mom had it handled. I trusted her. I did too, I said quietly. I feel like a fool, he continued, voice rough. You collapsed at work. You've been scraping together coins to buy instant noodles. Meanwhile, I've been wiring thousands of dollars, believing you were okay. I looked down. You couldn't have known? He shook his head. I should have. I should have asked more questions. Checked in more often, especially after you told her things were tough. There was a silence, heavy and painful. Then he looked at me, eyes sharp now. There's something else, and you deserve to hear it from me before you find out on your own. I tensed. We have a family trust, he said, set up before you and Serena were born. The plan was always for it to be split evenly when you both turned 25. I nodded slowly. Okay. He took a breath. But tonight, after everything that happened, I checked the statements. And, Caleb, there's a second account, a separate one, opened under Serena's name. It's been receiving regular transfers from the main trust. The room tilted slightly. How much? I asked. Not sure I wanted the answer. He hesitated. Just over $400,000. I stared at him, too stunned to speak. She's 23. She's not even supposed to have access to that money yet. Your mother's been making unauthorized withdrawals for at least 2 years. It felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. I've already contacted the lawyers, Dad said. We're freezing Serena's account, and we're taking legal steps to return those funds to the trust. I blinked hard, trying to process it all. That money was supposed to be for both of us, I whispered. For our futures, and she just handed it away? Your mom thought she was doing what was best for Serena, he said. But it wasn't her decision to make, and it sure as hell wasn't fair. I couldn't find words. I felt hollow. She always believed Serena needed more, I said eventually. More support, more praise, more chances. She made it seem like you didn't need anything at all, Dad said. Like you were supposed to be strong enough to carry the world by yourself. I looked at him, But I wasn't. He reached over, gripped my shoulder. I know that now. And it kills me that I didn't see it sooner. He stood slowly, like the weight of the truth had aged him. I want you to focus on school, on your health. From now on, I'll be wiring your allowance directly. And I'm going to be more involved. In your life. In Serena's. In everything. I nodded, throat tight. He walked to the door but paused. I'll also be meeting with a divorce lawyer next week. The words echoed in the quiet. Wait, divorce? I asked. I don't know yet, he said. But after what she's done, to you, to the trust, to this family, I don't know if we can come back from it. And then he left, leaving the door open behind him. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling again. The stars still didn't glow, but at least now I could finally see what had been hiding in the dark all along. The call came the next morning, right after breakfast. I was still in my room brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed with a familiar name. Serena. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. Hey. What did you say to Dad? She snapped before I could even say hello. I paused. I told him the truth. There was a pause on her end, then an exhale. The truth? Caleb, you made it sound like I've been stealing from you. You've been living off money that was supposed to be split between us, I said evenly. Money I didn't even know existed. You're getting thousands every month while I've been skipping meals. I didn't know that, she said sharply. I didn't know you were struggling that bad. Would it have mattered? I asked. She didn't answer for a moment. I thought Mom had it all under control. She always said you were fine, that you didn't need anything. I felt something snap in my chest. I fainted at work, Serena. I woke up in a hospital with an IV in my arm because I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I didn't need a Dior scarf. I needed dinner. Silence, then more quietly. Is that really what happened? Yes, I said. And while I was collapsing behind a coffee bar, you were hashtagging your new outfits. She sighed, the arrogance finally draining from her voice. I didn't know, I swear. Well, now you do, I said, my voice sharp but tired. And Dad does too. That's why you're not getting $4,000 a month anymore. She bristled. He said he's reducing it to $1,200. That's nothing. How am I supposed to live on that in Florence? I let out a bitter laugh. Welcome to my world. You think I can just get a job? She said. I'm a full-time student. So am I said, and I've been holding down 3 jobs at the same time. She didn't respond. I get that your field is expensive. I get that appearances matter. But you were draining everything, Serena. You didn't just take what you needed. You took what you wanted, what you felt entitled to, without once asking where it came from. You sound just like Dad, she muttered. Then maybe it's time you started listening to both of us. She hung up. Downstairs, I heard Mom pacing, slamming a drawer shut. Dad's voice was calm, but firm, his tone carrying the weight of final decisions. Later that afternoon, he pulled me aside. I've informed your mother that from now on, I'll be managing all financial distributions, he said. I also asked her to stop communicating with Serena about money. And? I asked. She didn't take it well. She's been trying to secretly send Serena extra money even this morning. I blinked. She's still doing it? After all this? He nodded grimly. That's why I spoke to a lawyer. We're moving forward with the divorce. I felt both shocked and not shocked at all. This isn't just about money, Caleb, he continued. It's about trust. I let things go for too long, ignored the signs. But after seeing what it's done to you, to all of us, I can't let it go anymore. I didn't know what to say. My family wasn't just unraveling, it was being ripped apart. But somewhere inside, beneath the sorrow and disbelief, there was also relief. The secrets were out. The lies were done. The damage was real, but so was the clarity. That night, I packed my bag to fly back to Chicago. Dad handed me an envelope at the door. Inside was a check. Back pay, he said. What you should have received these past few months. It's yours now. And every month from here on out, the money comes straight from me. I looked at him, my throat tight. Thanks, Dad. He pulled me in for a hug, the first one I could remember in years. Just focus on your future, he said quietly. I'll take care of the rest. When I returned to Chicago, the air felt different. Cold, yes, but clearer, lighter. Maybe it was the crisp wind off the lake. Or maybe it was knowing, finally, that I wasn't alone anymore. The first thing I did was stop by the grocery store. I didn't rush past the produce section this time. I picked up fresh spinach, sweet potatoes, apples. I bought real bread, chicken, even a bottle of olive oil. That night, I made myself a full meal. Simple, but hot and real. I didn't realize how deeply I'd missed the feeling of being fed. Not just by food, but by care. With Dad now wiring my allowance directly, I was able to drop the delivery job immediately. I kept tutoring chemistry, because I enjoyed it, but scaled back my cafe shifts to just weekends. The difference was almost immediate. I started sleeping full nights. My skin cleared up. The constant ache behind my eyes, the stress I didn't even know was there, began to fade. For the first time since starting college, I had room to breathe, to study, to focus, and my grades reflected it. Within a few weeks, I climbed out of academic probation and was invited to join the university's undergraduate research program. I finally had time to attend the Pharmacy Student Society meetings. I even made a few new friends. People I hadn't spoken to before because I was always running to the next shift. I called Dad every Sunday. At first, it was just updates. Classes, progress, the occasional funny story. But soon, the conversations deepened. We talked about why he went into emergency medicine, the patients who stuck with him, the mistakes he'd made and what he'd learned. I see so much of myself in you, he told me one night. But you've already shown more resilience than I ever had at your age. It meant everything to hear that. As for Serena, things changed slowly, but they did change. At first, she resisted the new budget, called it impossible, told Dad she might have to drop out. But when neither of us budged, something surprising happened. She adapted. She found a part-time job at a boutique near the school, one of those small, family-run fashion shops that valued creativity over clout. At first, she hated it, complained constantly, but a month later, she called me. I think I like it, she said. My boss is teaching me how to source affordable materials. Like, I'm actually learning how clothes are made, not just how they look on Instagram. That was the first real personal thing she'd said to me in years. Our conversations became more frequent, tentative at first, cautious, but over time, more open. She told me about customers she helped, the local designers she admired, the projects she was working on. I told her about the lab work I'd started doing, the professor who said I had a natural eye for chemical interactions. We started to talk like siblings again. One day, during a video call, Serena held up a sketchbook filled with designs. Simple, elegant, and practical. These are beautiful, I said, genuinely impressed. Thanks, she said, blushing a little. They're not flashy, but my professor says they've got structure. Purpose. That's what matters. Then she paused. I never realized how much Mom's favoritism shaped how I saw myself and you. I looked at her. We both grew up thinking the way she treated us was normal. I liked being the special one, she admitted, and I think I pretended not to notice how alone you were. I nodded. I got used to being invisible, until I couldn't be anymore. She looked down. I'm sorry, Caleb, for not seeing it sooner. I'm not angry, I said. Just glad we're here now. A year later, everything looked different, because everything was different. I was in my 4th year of pharmacy school, near the top of my class, and preparing for my residency interviews. With the financial pressure lifted, I had the time and focus to give my best to school, and to myself. I'd gained back the weight I'd lost. My skin glowed with health. I even laughed more. Dad had become a steady presence in my life. He called every week without fail, not just to check in, but to talk. Really talk. We had deep conversations about medicine, patients, ethics. Sometimes we even discussed things like hiking trails he wanted to try, or shows he'd picked up to stay young. Last month, he visited Chicago and took me out to dinner at a cozy Italian place off campus. He raised a glass and said, "I'm not just proud of the doctor you're becoming, Caleb. I'm proud of the man you already are." I'll never forget that. Serena, too, had changed. After the initial meltdown, she threw herself into her job at the boutique. And she started designing a line of minimalist, sustainable pieces using locally sourced fabrics. Her professors took notice. Eventually, she was invited to debut her first small collection at a student showcase. To everyone's surprise, including mine, Dad flew to Florence for the show. Sat front row, beaming. He sent me a photo of her on stage, bowing beside her models. "She did it," his text read. "On her own terms." As for Serena and me, we'd rebuilt something real between us. The old rivalry, the imbalance, the years of unspoken resentment, they didn't vanish overnight. But they started to dissolve under the weight of honesty. We texted often, called sometimes. She'd ask about my classes, I'd ask about her sketches. We learned to see each other not through the lens of our mother's favoritism, but as individuals. One evening, during a video call, she held up her new designs. "They look expensive," I said. "They're not," she replied. "I've learned to do more with less. Turns out, limitations force you to be more creative." I smiled. "Welcome to the life of a broke college student." She laughed. "I think I like the new me better." Mom, on the other hand, was still adjusting. The divorce had left her with less than she expected. Dad had presented the courts with evidence of her financial manipulation, how she'd funneled trust money into secret accounts, lied about expenses, and refused to provide basic support for one child while overspending on the other. The judge had been unsympathetic. She lost the house, moved into a modest condo, and took a part-time job at a local event planning agency. It was her first job in over 20 years. She called me a few times, short, guarded conversations. She still tried to send Serena money occasionally, but Serena had learned to set boundaries. "I love you, Mom," she told her once, "but I can't let you control my life with your credit card anymore." It was the first time she'd said no to Mom, and it changed everything. This past Christmas, Serena and I visited Mom together. It was awkward, quiet, full of unspoken tension, but it was something. We stayed for 2 hours, exchanged gifts, ate cookies, and left. Baby steps. Sometimes I still think about that night I collapsed. How my body finally gave out. How a single moment of darkness uncovered everything that had been buried for years. I wouldn't wish that collapse on anyone, but I also can't regret it. Because it tore down a lie and forced us to rebuild a family. Not perfect, but honest. Not polished, but real. And for the first time, I'm not just surviving. I'm living. I'm seen. I'm loved. Not because I had to earn it, but because I deserve it. Just as I am.